An estimated 23% of the United States population experiences a mental disorder in any given year. That is nearly 1 in 4 people. These statistics show how common mental illness is and how it can affect anyone at any time. But there is hope. Recovery from mental illness is possible, and it happens every day. The following stories are unique and real. They are told by people just like you. These people struggle with mental illness in much the same way others struggle with arthritis, diabetes, and heart disease. They are stories of trauma, illness, courage, and triumph over fear. These are the stories of 5 individuals on their personal paths to recovery.
I ended up being diagnosed with schizophrenia and OCD because of things that happened in my life, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I went untreated so long.
Left untreated, recalls Mark, because of his reluctance to accept treatment due to the stigma associated with mental illness.
I struggled for many years because of it. I know that if I had accepted treatment then my life would have taken a different course and it wouldn't have been quite so difficult. I've been homeless several times, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that my mental illness went untreated. My life today is vastly improved since I was diagnosed with major depression and then later OCD and schizophrenia. I work for community mental health. I like to write. I think mental illness has given me an opportunity to discover things other than just construction work as far as making a living or being employed.
Mark ponders the possibility of life without recovery.
I've often thought about that if I hadn't got help when I did, and if I didn't have a supportive family. Without help from community mental health and a supportive family, I think it's very possible that I would be living on the street somewhere. My life is pretty good today, I think. I've got a job, I'm married, I'm a homeowner, I've taken vacations, and all these things I felt were never going to happen for me, but they eventually did. So.
Part of borderline personality disorder is living in an environment that's not compatible with what the child needs. As far as, like, I was a really sensitive child, and the way my parents parented me, they weren't horrible parents, but they didn't really give me what I needed as a child. And there's also a thing called invalidating environment where my feelings weren't validated. If I said, hey, I'm sad about this, I was always questioned, well, why are you sad, or you shouldn't be sad. So it wasn't an overt trauma, but I had kind of a difficult expressing my emotions, and I felt like I had to keep them inside. One thing that was really unique about my childhood was I was pretty lonely, and I created this entire world in my head. We had our own language. There were people that I could talk to. There were people that I say, quote unquote, raised me and raised that side of me. I went to school there. They taught me how to translate their language into my language. I was really scared and really hesitant to tell anybody about this. They told me, the people that I created told me they would take over my mind and they would somehow kill me if I told anybody. So that's why it's just coming out now in therapy that I had this whole other thing going on in childhood. And what my therapist says, it was a way to cope with what I thought was traumatic.
As she grew older, Morgan's coping mechanisms were tested and stretched to the limit, as she was no longer able to escape into the world she had created as a child.
After that, there were periods of time where I was suicidal, and I just wanted everything to stop.
Often the person feels as though their life is spinning out of control. They feel that as much as they desperately desire to bring their life into a manageable and controllable space, they're not able to. And for the people that love and care about a person with a borderline personality disorder, they often view the person as being very moody, having periods where their attempts at engaging people in their world often leave them more alienated or feeling alone.
It's really hard to fight off the negative thoughts and the suicidal thoughts. It takes your constant energy. You feel at night, you feel just totally exhausted because all day you're trying to refute all the negative things that are going on. That's probably one of the most helpful things that people have done, is just letting me know that they still care. And the people that have been key in my life have shown me that it's not over. You know, one thing doesn't make or break a relationship, and that they will stick by me no matter what. I can smile again, and it's a genuine smile this time. It was a choice for me to stay sick or be in recovery, and I'm glad I chose recovery.
I really struggled in school. I also have attention deficit disorder, but the attention deficit disorder wasn't diagnosed until 25 years after I graduated high school, and I started, finally started college. And when I was growing up, that I had such a high IQ that my teachers didn't understand why, you know, I behaved the way I did, and why I wasn't able to function better in school. And they just labeled me a problem child.
On the path to recovery, connecting the dots between trauma and mental illness is necessary and often painful.
I've had the diagnosis of major depression recurrent for probably since 1996, and that's definitely accurate. I figured out that I was an alcoholic when I had just turned 30, and I put myself into treatment for the first time for alcoholism. The borderline personality disorder, which was, for me, was the toughest nut to crack, that diagnosis was given to me back in 2003.
Dwayne finds fulfillment by sharing his experience through consumer advocacy opportunities and his job as a peer support specialist.
I was appointed about a year and a half ago to the Michigan Department of Community Health Advisory Council on Mental Illness.
I absolutely love riding my motorcycle. I feel free, you know, it's hard to explain. It's just a sense of freedom, and just brings a lot of joy into my life. The last 2 or 3 years, I've gotten more and more where I don't even have to focus on my recovery. You know, it's I just, for the most part, just focus on living and enjoying my life, and you know, and I really never thought I'd be able to get back to that place, and I'm grateful that I have.
My mother was rather abusive. She was sick at the time, and she was rather abusive physically and mentally to me. And then my sister was diagnosed with cancer. She was only 17. And when she got really bad, about that time I had turned 19, and I kind of isolated myself and stayed away from her because that was the only way I could handle it. And I became involved in drug use at that time in order to handle it, and drank a lot at that time because I couldn't handle her dying. And eventually, well, she was 16 when she was diagnosed, and she was 17 by the time she lost her fight with cancer. And that really traumatized me and made me worse in my disease. I went to see a psychologist, and she diagnosed my disease as manic depressive.
Bipolar disorder is a disease that is referred to by some as manic depression. This is a case where people experience very high highs and very low lows, and it is not what people typically think of in terms of I'm having a good day or I'm having a bad day. A person in the manic phase of this illness often presents as very restless. They have decreased need for sleep. They feel that their speech as well as their actions are wound up and that they are on the go in a way that just doesn't make sense to them or the people that are seeing them.
I decided one night I got really depressed and I thought, nobody cares about me, and I might as well just make all their problems go away, because I was a big problem.
The depressive episode is often very, very deep, where people literally cannot get themselves to get out of bed in the morning, and despite the sense that they need to be doing things, they need to be having their normal routine, they're not able to make themselves do that. So their energy, their feelings of worthlessness, all of those things are impacted. Oftentimes they have thoughts about ending their own life.
I called mental health, and the man that I spoke to talked me into going to the hospital. So I went to the hospital and told them I was going to hurt myself, and they put me in a hospital in the psych ward. And that's where I finally got on the right medications. And a gentleman from down in the rehab center came up and told me I was an alcoholic too. And so I went to the AA, and there was people there. They weren't just old drunks. There was people there from all walks of life and all ages, and that surprised me. And I began to realize by listening to their stories that yes, I was an alcoholic. And so between the disease and the alcoholism, I can't tell which is which, because basically I got into recovery from both of them. Thank God for my recovery. By the grace of God, as they say in AA, thank God for my recovery that I am not like that today.
As far as my childhood was concerned, I didn't know that I had a mental condition. I was always bubbly and outgoing, and I was always on the manic side, so I didn't know that being hyper and chatterbox was part of the mental condition.
When Heather decided to seek treatment, she quickly learned heredity played a significant role in her diagnosis.
When I was first diagnosed was when I was 23 years old. It was about 10 years ago. It's been a long time. A doctor knew that my mom had the condition, and she was able to diagnose me pretty quickly, because she said, you have the exact same features as your mom does.
Heather experienced symptoms which were consistent not only with those of her birth mother, but many others who suffer with bipolar disorder as well.
I have very opposite symptoms. When I'm manic, I'm really hyper, and I have all these ideas, and I'm the greatest inventor in the world, and I'm very artistic, and I write things quickly, and I'm very manic, very high. But when I'm low, you could tell my personality is not the same. I stay in bed more. I cry a lot. I think there's nothing to live for. And depression ruins my life when it comes on. Because I have my mental health condition, I know how helpful my family was in getting me help. I think someone that has a disorder may not know they have a disorder, and that's what a loved one is someone that loves you enough to say, we need to get you some help. Having a mental condition doesn't mean it's going to ruin your life. There's a lot of wonderful people out there who want to help you. There's medical professionals who are ready to prescribe you helpful medications. There's a lot of new breakthrough things that science is coming out with every day that helps people who have mental conditions. You can live successfully and happily, and you can have a wonderful life.
I have a mental illness.
I could be your father.
I could be your mother,
I could be your sister,
Your brother.
your coworker,
your friend.
Your wife.
Your husband.
Your neighbor.
I could be you.
I could be you.
Have you met me along the way?
Have you met me?
Have you met me along the way?